everyone, welcome to Intellipaat. Today we will see and learn what React.JS is. But before we go into an in-depth explanation, let's start with an example. So now, suppose one of your friend has posted a photo on Facebook. You go and like the photo and start seeing the comments. So while you're browsing the comments, you can see the like number increases, let's say by 10, 15 or so numbers. So, without reloading the pages, the number starts increasing. This magical count changes by React.JS. React.JS is a JavaScript library used for building user interfaces. So, I hope now you understood a little bit about what is React.JS. So, now let's start with the details. But before that, guys, do not forget to subscribe the channel and hit on the bell icon so that you never miss an update on us. And also, we do provide you end-to-end training on React.JS. The details is given below in the description box. Now, let's start with what is React.JS.
React.js is essentially a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. So it says pretty much in one sentence what React.js is. It's a front-end JavaScript library. So the thing about React.js is that it only deals with one aspect of the full stack sort of web architecture. It deals with what the user sees. And the main selling point of React.js is that it gives us a much more flexible way to use JavaScript inside a website on the front end, on the client's end. So unless we couple React.js with another framework, we can't essentially do anything other than the view side of things, the front end side of things. So we'll get into that much more. It is being maintained by Facebook. It is being used by Facebook and maintained by Facebook and the community. So that gives us a lot of advantages as per updates and such. And moving on, is React.js an MVC framework? As I was discussing before, what MVC means is model view controller. So basically in the diagram we can see how it works, how the MVC architecture traditionally works. So first we have the view, which is seen by the user. The user sees the view. Whenever you load a website, you get a view, right? You load up Facebook, you get a view. You get the login page and you get to enter the username and the password, whatever website you are accessing. You see it, you use it using the controller. You type in the password and username that you have. The controller transfers that information into the model, which is the server-side script. And when the server-side script gets the login information, gets the account creation information, whatever the server-side script gets, it manipulates. It basically manipulates that, updates the view that you might be getting. So it sends a new view towards you. So say that you've logged in to your account. Obviously, you will not keep seeing the login web page. You will get into the account web page. You will get to your home page of your Facebook account or your Gmail account. You will not keep seeing the login page. So that is how the view is updated, and you then get to see the new view. And then accordingly, it's a cycle. Then you implement something new. Say you want to mail somebody. You create a new view for that by clicking on compose email, and then the controller does the same thing over again. So that is how the MVC framework essentially works. So what does React.js, how does React.js fit in over here? Is it an entire MVC framework where it does all of these things, or does it only do one thing? So as we can see on the left hand side of the view the view thing in the diagram, we have the React.js logo. So basically what meaning to imply is that React.js on its own only deals with the view aspect of things, the user interface aspect of things. All of the other backend activities, all of the other controller activities are being operated upon by different elements, which we can use React.js when we couple with it, but React.js on its own only deals with view. So let's read up what's written over here. React is only concerned with rendering data to the DOM. So creating React applications usually requires the use of additional libraries for state management and routing. So basically what this implies is when you're using React, you can only see the user interface, but to create the routing management, what it means that to go from one view to the other view, you cannot simply do that using React.js. You need another libraries for that, more libraries for that. So Redux and React Router are some of these libraries which you can couple with React.js to implement a sort of a controller model logic with it. So basically, no. The answer to if React.js is an MVC framework, it's a no. So moving on. What is the React.js syntax? So briefly looking at the React.js syntax, we'll obviously get into the hands-on later, but right now we'll just give you the basic idea of what the React.js is. So as we can see here, we've created my React app and used it as an ID for this particular React.js file that we have over here. We've used script type text Babel. We'll discuss what Babel is essentially afterwards, and we're using a function. And what we're returning inside that function is quite interesting. And this is the flexible aspect of React.js that I was talking about a while before. Is that we're basically sending something that looks quite familiar, right? It's an HTML H1 that we're returning using a JavaScript function. So basically, what React.js gives us is the implementation to return something that could be rendered in a web browser as HTML. Although this is not HTML, this is JSX, and we would be discussing what JSX is later too. But as of now, we can understand how we can look at it is that within the H1 tag, we have props.greeting, which is obviously inside a curly bracket. And the curly brace implies that the code within the curly brace is JavaScript. So basically what we're doing over here is below we can see that there's a variable app, and we've used a variable greeting to store the phrase hello world. And when we basically perform the React DOM.render, it basically tells the React.js application to render whatever function that we are calling. And as we can see, the ID is my React app, and we are using the .get element by ID, my React app, and basically this executes the entire React.js file. So when we execute this, the thing that would print on the screen on the web browser would be hello world. So this is the flexibility that React.js provides. It gives us the way to basically use JavaScript, use HTML, something similar to HTML within JavaScript, and JavaScript within that. I know it's confusing, but within that JSX, we can use JavaScript once again. So that is the advantage that we get from React.js. So basically, what this means is that the JavaScript engine present within a web browser can parse this JSX code, which is similar to HTML code, parse it as JavaScript, and it can give you the view. It can render that JSX code as HTML elements and basically create new elements for you to see within the web page that the user is seeing its result on. So that is the advantage of JSX. It gives you the flexibility and the coding language that JavaScript can provide you with, and it gives you the front end functionality of HTML. So moving on. Now we'll get to the hands-on part, guys, which I'm sure you guys have been waiting for after the theoretical. So we'll basically get into the basics of React.js. We'll create a simple application to get you started on how React.js works, and then we'll get into the further learning section of things. Welcome to the hands-on section of the tutorial. We will now download Node.js because we need a backend for the React.js project that we're going to do. So go to nodejs.org and get the most stable version of Node.js. Now, once you've gotten that, once you've installed it, you can open up the most efficient, the most handy IDE that you use. For me, I use Visual Studio Code, so I'll open that up. So here we have Visual Studio Code. Now to create any new project, we obviously need to create a folder. So firstly, we'll create a folder. I will first close this up. I think I already have Visual Studio open. Yeah. So we first create a folder. You can create this folder anywhere you'd like, and just go into open folder, go navigate towards the folder and open it up. So right now I have one folder created, which would be React demo. This is the project that I've already created. I'll create a new one. New file, which would be new folder, which I would call React project. Once you've created that, you can click on the folder, you can right click on it, and you can click on open terminal. So this would basically give you the cmd prompt from this directory. The directory is the project directory that you've created. Press enter so you can type it out. The first thing we'll do is initialize it with a boilerplate reactJS, node.js uh, folder structure. So what we need to do is to initialize it, we need to write npx create react, add a hyphen over here, create react app, and then we'll add whatever name you want. For now, I can call it react project. So it will take some time. Yeah, a new React app has been created inside that directory. It'll take some time to install all of the dependency and fetch the data. So we'll wait up. So we basically it takes a lot of time depending on the internet speed that you may have. Yeah, so it's finally loaded. We've initialized the project. We can now see and confirm whether we have done that. So all the node modules have been loaded up. So this, the public, the SRC, this is where we'll primarily do the coding part of things. We don't need to concern ourselves with node modules in public. Discussing what all of these subdirectories have, this is the folder called node modules. So basically all the packages that you've installed and you would need later on for your React project are installed in the node modules folder. The public is basically, as you can see, there's an index.html. So if you've started off with web development, you would know what this is. Basically the boilerplate web development HTML code. We close that up. We will be dealing with the React project, so we will be dealing with the SRC folder, the source folder. So all of these files, the app.css, the style file, the JS file, which would be primarily the React program that we will be dealing with, and the app.test, we will just go ahead and ignore that. Index.js, index.cs. Basically, you can create as many modules as you want, depending on the project functionality of the web page or the website functionality that you want to have with React.js. So without any further ado, let's get into the project. Now that we've created the server, we can see that it's running on HTTP localhost 3000 HTTP, the local IP address that I have. It's the port 3000. So the server is running successfully. Now, whatever edits we make, once we save it, we can refresh the page and see the edits being made in real time. So that's a good thing about these development environments. You can see what you're changing, and it amounts to faster development. So firstly, we'll look at the index.js file that we have over here. As we can see, this react dom.render seems quite similar to the syntax that we saw in the presentation that we were having just before this. So we can see over here that it's rendering something called app, and this app is referring to this app.js JavaScript file that we have, which is also a React file. And this is basically giving us the view of the reactjs.org page that we're having over here. This is how it's happening. So and we have obviously an app.css for that to provide the styling for it. So if you've done HTML CSS, you will understand this as well. So basically you can take up a style sheet from a CSS file and use it in a JS file as well under the JSX section, wherever you're returning the JSX value. Say here we're using this. We've added a class name. We're using that same class name over here. So that is how we are basically implementing that. So the peculiar thing to notice over here is this get element by ID root. So this is over here in index. You have index.html under the public folder. If you go down over here, you have div ID root. So as you can see, the no script says you need to enable JavaScript to run this app. Very obviously, you need to do that. So as you can see, even in the comments, this HTML file is a template. If you open it directly in your browser, you will see an empty page because there is nothing in here. So essentially, what this is referring to is that whenever you render this React DOM.render, whenever you run this function in the HTML, the index.html file that we have over here in public, it's taking that source from the component that we have over here and it's rendering it in that HTML. That is why we're referring it as document.getElement by ID root. We're rendering it in that HTML file, whatever the user loads up whenever he opens the website. So moving on. Firstly, before we get started with the tutorial, we will delete everything that is here in the app.js file so we can start from scratch. So firstly, to make this app.js into a reactJS component, first we need to import React because obviously this is a React file. So we need to import the module that we have in the node modules. So first we'll import React. So this is how you import React from, and this would be the module name, which is React, and we add semicolon after that because that's in the syntax. Then we need to create a function for this component, which is app.js, and we create an app function called app. We don't need to create a function with the same name as the JS file. That's not necessary. I'm just doing it as right now. And then we'll return a JSX value. So how do we return a multi-line JSX value? We'll just add a round bracket for it, and we'll add something similar that would seem similar to HTML, which would be div, adding a division, and we'll just add an h1 file, h1 element. Say we want to write hello world because that's what we write whenever we're trying something new, any coding language. So once we've done that, we'll add semicolon over here to close it as an element, return, and then we'll export this because exporting it is important so that it can be accessible by other JS files or other elements of the program. And we'll use the function name, whatever function we're exporting, we'll use that name, and we will save this. Then we will check out the index.js file that we have over here. As we can see, what we're doing over here is we're rendering apps. So whatever is there in the app.js file should render whenever we run the website. So we'll just go into the web page, we'll refresh it, and as you can see, we have the hello world over here. So it has changed from the previous element to the hello world. So basically what our code is doing for us here is whenever you go into the app.js file, let's remove the 8 over there. I think that's the OBS causing some issues. Whenever you go into the app.js file and you return this HTML looking JSX value, it basically creates new element, a single element. Right now it's creating a division element which is containing the h1 tag. We can add multiple tags over here. We can add an h2 if we want, and we can add like something like hello world to save it. When we go and refresh this, we'll have this over here. So what React is basically doing is compiling this JSX code into HTML. So what we will do next is add some dynamic functionality to the code because that's what reactJS is primarily useful for. We'll just create, I would say, another function, and we'll just create it inside the app itself. We don't need to create another function for it. We'll just go over here and we'll create a const function. Say rather than writing some an entire function for it, we can just create, say, hello world. So something would reflect on our console. So the way to do this is create a function is using const. This, and then we'll open up a curly bracket. In this function, I say I would like to display some message on the console. So we'll do that. Console.log. I would want to say console says hello world. We've done that. Semicolon over there, and we'll put a semicolon at the end of the function. Now that we've wrapped up the function, we can essentially, since we're using React.JS, the advantage of React.JS is now that we can use JavaScript within the JSX element present in the return statement of React. So say we've printed hello world 2, or we've rendered hello world 2. If we want to add a button for printing that the console says hello world, we want to do it on click of a button, add some dynamic functionality to the code. We can simply use an implement that JSX provides as opposed to HTML. We just simply add on click, and then we obviously use some curly bracket. If we want to denote that we're using JavaScript code, we use curly bracket for that. We will say hello world, which already showed up, and then we will add the name for the button. For the button, I would say, what should we call it? Tell me console hello world, we'll call it that. Once we've done that and we save that and we go back to the website, it should show a button. Now, to just show that it's acting dynamically, I'll just press F11 to see the console, F12 see the console. Whenever I click console hello world, it says over here on the right hand side, the console says hello world. So that is basically how we implement some dynamic functionality using React.js. Another cool thing we can do with React.js is implement reusability, as we had discussed before. So say that we've used this division JSX element where we say hello world 2 times and we add a button for it. What if we want to use this again and again as an element on our web page? Should we write this again? Like repeat this 3 times, as we could just Control C and Control V it 3 times, or we could just copy all of this logic, copy this over here, copy all of this logic, and we will create a new component. We will call this say. We always use camel quotes in JS, which would mean the first letter should be small. Say hello world .js. Create a new component. We'll do the same thing again. This is the react.js file. We'll import react from get, and we'll add a semicolon over there, and we'll paste the logic. So we can call this something else. We can call this say hello. And it's basically implementing the same logic again, and we export this. Export default say hello, so that it's accessible by other files. And why don't we go ahead and remove everything that is present in this return statement, because that would be redundant as we're doing it in another statement again. So what do we do next? So before we actually do anything, we need to, since we've imported that file, we actually need to, since we've exported the say hello world component, we need to import it before we implement it in our code as a reusable sort of factor. So what do we do for that? We will simply write the function name that we need from here, which is say hello. We will say hello, I think that's the function name, and we'll use from, and we'll add the directory that is required. So it's in the same directory. So we'll just use // and we'll use say hello world, and that should import whatever functions are present in that module. So we'll just put a semicolon over there. So now what we'll do is the most efficient thing about React.js is we can simply write it as an HTML element function name, and it will basically implement it. We'll write say hello, and we'll close it off. Yeah. Once we've done that, we can check the web page as to what changes it will reflect. We're getting some errors. Firstly, we'll remove this function as it's not being used in the newer version of the code that we have here. we'll remove this curly bracket and semicolon, and we'll compile this once again. We'll look at how it's functioning, how it reflects on the website. So what we were doing wrong was we were not using proper casing. So what it means is in the say hello world function, we were using something like say with a small s and starting with the small s, which was not proper casing syntax followed in JS. So we'll remove that and we'll just export it with a capital letter, which is just a function hello, and we are importing hello from say hello world. So once we do that and we just use the hello function over here, what basically we achieve is this. So basically gives the same output. Console says say hello world. So now we come to the reusability aspect of the code. What we'll do here is if we want to repeat this, say we control C this and control V it 5 times and save this. So this should show the element 5 times. So this way we are achieving code reusability, and this is one of the biggest advantages of using React.JS. Now suppose we need to change the styling for the text that we've used in the hello world statement. So what we will do for that is we'll simply go into div in the say hello world.js, and we'll write class name. Class name. We'll call this class name hello style, and we'll close off the Angular. Once we save that and we'll go into app.css, we will add a new class over here. I'll call this name. The class name is hello style. We'll open up the style bracket for this, and over here we'll add something like background color, and we'll use aqua, and we'll save that. So we can't actually use the style if we don't import it, so we'll first import the CSS sheet that we have. We'll import styles, this app.css, and that will be about right. I'll control this this and check the website. And now for every component that we're using, the background color has been changed to aqua. So another way you can add some sort of modularity to the code is say that you've added the background color to the elements, right? You've added aqua for the elements. Wherever you see the hello world statement, the hello world division modules, we've added the background color of aqua. Say we want to add a different color for the entirety of the website. So we'll simply go into the main website structure, that's the main web page structure, the main division, the main element that we have. And we'll basically go over here and add another class name. And we'll create another class name. We'll call this website style, and save that up. And once we've saved that up, we'll go we'll import the style sheet in this as well, and the address for the style sheet is app.css. Add semicolon right over here. Now, obviously, we need to create the style in the style sheet. We'll go over here. We'll create dot website style. Over here, we'll add the attribute value, background color, to something a little more contrasting with. Not much contrasting, but a little more different than the generic aqua, black aquamarine. Save that. Go into that, and as you can see, the space between the elements is filled with the color of aquamarine. This kind of looks good, better than the previous iteration where it was had a background color of white. So obviously we're using functions. This hello statement is a function, right? So what we can do here is we can pass some parameters to that function. Say we want to pass a message to the parameter of the function. We want to pass something other than hello world. We may pass I am good, and just copy this over. Actually, I forgot. I have to add forward slash over here, backslash over here, add it over after the element ends. And we add this again. Let's add space over here. Let's copy this and we'll replace the slash with that. Let's add space over here. So we've called the hello function 5 times and we've passed the parameter I am good. We can change this to I am bad, I am evil, I am okay, I am alright. So these are 5 different messages. We're going to say hello world. So what we can do now is, once you've passed that parameter into the function, what we can do now is pass a props parameter over here. So what this props would do is this would take in the input that is being given from here. It would take in these parameters and basically behave in a similar manner. I'll demonstrate. First we'll remove these h1 and h2 tags. We'll add a h1 tag over here and basically write the parameter reference and we'll write message, which is what we are passing to this function, the parameter value, the message. So this again implements the concept of reusability and modularity in the code. So once I save this, and this I also saved, I'll go to the website and it says props.message. So can you tell me what's wrong? It's a very simple, basic question. So what we've done wrong here is we've actually not put this into a JavaScript encasing, because we're using this as JavaScript code. We're not using this as HTML elements. This props.message is not an HTML element and it's taking it as literal text. So once we embrace it in curly brackets, it will be taken as JavaScript code. And once we save that, now we'll get the actual output that we're looking for. So we're getting I'm good, I'm bad, and all of the parameters that we had passed. So this way we can implement reusability in JavaScript React.JS code.